Well, hello, I'm Charles Brock, and I'm known as the rocking chair man. So what is this all about? Well, I have other interests too, and I'm a musician, and I like to play the mandolin and the guitar and some other acoustic instruments. So I wanted a stand for my mandolin. And so I built one and realized that the same concept will work for a guitar, and I can show you how to build a custom stand, a floor stand like this for your guitar or your mandolin or whatever the acoustic instrument. Let me show you how. Well, as you can see, I've got a rocking chair, I've got my little picking stool here, and here's the stand. Most of my work is pretty sculptural. So the stand that I've built is sculptural, but it's not near as artsy as the other two pieces. But there's some things here that I've included that you could include in yours, and they will make yours kind of really stand out. There are only 3 parts to this stand. There's a base. This base is about 1 3/4 of an inch thick to 1 7/8. It needs to be big enough, long enough, wide enough, and heavy enough to be able to keep the stand and the instrument safe, to keep it from being real tipsy. And of course on the bottom I have included some pads here, which is important. It kind of makes it a little more quiet. Then we've got an upright here. Now the upright, or the column, it is tapered on this one. It fits into a mortise, a square hole, if you will, that is drilled and chiseled into the base. And it's got a tenon that fits right down into it, and I'll show you how to do that. And then it not only tapers this way, it swings with a nice little sweep out toward the front to take the instrument that's hanging away from the column, because you don't want it banging into the column. And also, this gives it a little bit of distance too. Let me show you what this is. Online, you can buy these from Amazon. There are a lot of different places that are sources for this, and they usually come on with a little wooden backing, and it just screws on into what I did was I put a threaded insert in there, and I'll show you how to do that. And so you just take the backer off, use the threaded insert, and then you've got a nice little padded rubber type arm right here that tightens up real good to hold your instrument. This one, the column is 23.5 inches. Plus, it's got a tenon on it, and the tenon needs to be at least 1 inch long. So that would mean that we would need to be 24.5 inches for the mandolin. Well, how do you size this for a guitar? Well, let's go to my guitar case. We'll open it up and we'll measure and get a critical measurement so that I can make one for that guitar. Here's how to get the critical measurement. In other words, I want a measurement from the base up to where it hangs. Plus I've got to add a little bit to it, which is 1 inch there. Got 1 inch of a tenon here. So I've got 2 inches to add on to from right at the curve of the headstock on both sides where it'll hang to here is 34 inches. So I've got 34 plus an additional inch here, an additional inch for the tenon. So I'm at 36 inches, and I've got an end pin that's a ½ inch. Now, I think what I want to do is have an inch at least in clearance here under the instrument. So that takes me up to 37½ inches. So we ended up with 37½ being a critical measurement. In other words, from the hanger itself, where it would fit under the headstock, all the way down to the base, including the end pin. And then we want to give it maybe an inch more clearance there. So let's go for 38½. Now I've trimmed this end square, so it's a good place to measure from. The board itself is 5 inches in width across here, and the mandolin stand, the column was 3 inches in width. I think we want to end up being a little more robust than the mandolin stand because the guitar is a larger instrument and a heavier instrument. So 5 inches is going to give us enough room to get the length we need, the tenon, and to get that nice little curve that will place the instrument out over the bass, I think, in just the right spot. So let's start down here, and we want to have, first of all, we're going to lay out some points here. Now I'm using a marking knife. You might use a pencil, but I like the marking knife. And that's going to give me a place for that I can mark my tenon there, or at least the length of the tenon. All right, so we come up 38½ total. That's going to be the top right there. So we can, and we don't have to use a knife for that. We can use a pencil if we would like. Okay. And so we've got our tenon. Now, in between, what are we going to do? Well, I've already squared up the board. To start with, I face jointed the board to get it flat. You have to do that. Otherwise, if you just run it through a planer, you're going to get all the dips and doodles and stuff, and the planer will just help establish those even more. So we've got a nice flat piece to work with, and if you're going to do joinery, you really need that. Turn the board around because I like to be able to use the square in this manner. I want to be able to use the beam here against a square side of the stock and hold it nicely. My knife fits in the little mark that I made, and then I can very gingerly start cutting a curve there. You don't want to dig in and knock your square out of alignment. So, great thing about a knife cut is now I see it coming around the corner here. Put my square against that. When the lines come together, after you make the last edge there back to the face, when they come together that way, then you know your stock is square. The lines are straight. It's a good, kind of a good check or balance on your work there. Now, we're ready to go to the next step. All right, so I want to lay out a series of curves and a series of points that no matter how long this is, you've got to have those particular elements. You've got to have a tenon. You've got to have a flat right up here about 2 inches long so that you can drill and insert the threaded insert. All of these elements are very important. We've got to identify this 2-inch flat area right here. We've got to identify the thickness of the top of the column. We've got to make a curve, a long curve on the back, and we've got to make a curve on the inside, and we've got to lay out the tenon itself. All of those things. So I'm going to lay out about 1 inch in. This is a 5-inch board, so about 1 inch in, I'm going to make a mark. Then I'm going to give myself 2 inches of flat space here. And then we'll have a curve that will come to this point. We're going to have a curve that will come to that point. Now at the bottom down here, I like to have a little bit of a curve in back here, kind of a bow. If you notice, this kind of looks like a guitar neck in a way, or an instrument neck. And so to do that, I'm going to come in 1/4 of an inch down here, make myself a starting point, and then I am 1 inch and 1/8 from here to there. So this is going to be the bottom of our column. And now let's see if we can fair ourselves a nice curve on the outside. This is the curve we're trying to draw right now. So I'm going to lay it out from here to there. And this is something I've had for a while that's really nice for drawing things like this. It's just a flexible curve. And I think I want to come out a little further there. Yeah, that's not bad. Now I'm going to draw it in white. That way, especially on this walnut, it'll be visible. All right, so we have that line, and now at the bottom here, We'll come up about an inch right here. And now I want to make this curve. This curve here kind of follows that other curve up to that point. Now on the inside here, we're going to have another little curve down here, but if I can get this one laid out, now we're tapering toward the top. That looks pretty good. So right here we need to make a little curve coming in. Let me see what I can find here. I've got a scraper that has a nice little profile to it. I'm going to see if I can use it, kind of cut in. Then I can connect these lines. All right, that's looking pretty good. Then right here, I can use the other end of the scraper. All right. So, I like that. Yeah, I think that'll work real well. Now I've got a flat here and a flat there. Cut this across here. Yeah, and the tenon right there. Okay, I think the next thing is let's make the tenon. We only want to go in, let's say, a 1/4 of an inch deep, all the way around to start our tenon. Let me set up the table saw, and I'll show you how to start that tenon. You're going to like this. Got my board marked. I'm going to be cutting on this line all the way around to cut my shoulders. It's going to be a 1/4 of an inch deep cut. I've got a stop block here, back an inch away from the outside tooth of the blade on this side. And we'll make our first cuts there. And I took my square and set this to a 1/4 of an inch of cut above the crosscut sled. So now I'm ready to go. Now we've got our initial cuts all the way around, and now we can continue back and forth with the crosscut sled, just kerfing it out, and I think it's really going to be good. I showed you how to measure for your guitar. I'm building one, and you'll have a pattern for a a Martin guitar that is pretty much full size. A Dreadnought Martin might be a little larger. A Gibson Jumbo might be a little larger, but that's up to you to use the measuring system that I explained in order to size it for your guitar. If you need to stretch out the pattern a little bit, then you should be able to do that. But this pattern fits the guitar that I measured. Now, give you an idea, the board is 1 3/4 inches thick. It's been face jointed and planed so that I would have a full 1 3/4 inches. The length of it is 38.5 inches, and the video will show you how I took off 1/8 of an inch and made a shoulder on all the way around the board so that I could have a 1-inch tenon protruding at the bottom. And from that tenon, we'll size it by using the pattern. Now, the width of board that you need is somewhere around 4 7/8 to 5 inches in width. That'll work for you, and you'll have a little left for waste there. Now, I want to line up the board, and so here I go. I'm going to come all the way over to this edge, and that'll keep me from having to make so many cuts. And I'm going to back this up till it's square to the line. All right. Yeah, that's giving me what I want there. Now, all I need to do is draw this off. It's always nice to have a good, fresh, Sharpie type pen. Now, your pattern, you should make a permanent pattern out of it and just glue the paper pattern onto a piece of plywood. This is 1/8 inch plywood here. And you'll be able to make the project over and over again. All right. Now, I'm going to use this to make some lines where the tenon is going to live. I made the tenon a little off center. The back will be kind of rounded gently, so I didn't want to run into the tenon when I round over the back. The front, this little heel right here, not so much. So we've got this laid out. We can start making some cuts. Now, the first thing I want to do is make a cut down here. I can make a cut on the table saw that will square this up nicely. And so let's do that. And it looks like the measurement is, gosh, we're right at, let's say a quarter, 5/16 of an inch. So we're going to take it to the table saw, and I'm going to cut 5/16 of an inch off. So I'll meet you at the saw. So I'm going to push this through the table saw in a rip cut just past this line, and then very carefully pull the board back. And notice that I have a splitter there. Always use a splitter when you're using a rip cut. So now we want to go to the bandsaw and make some cuts. And we'll make this long cut first, and I'll show you how. Now we need to make a mark that'll help us get the right height for this tenon at the bandsaw. While everything is still kind of squared up, there's so much that we can do that we can't do after we make the bandsaw cuts and we don't have these great points of reference. Always keep your points of reference as long as you can. So I'm going to mark this. Now, I usually don't do joinery mark out joinery with a Sharpie, but first we create reality, and then we can measure what we have as far as the tenon, and then we can use cut lines and cut the perfect mortise for it to fit into the base. But at this point, we're trying to create our reality here. So let's go and use this part to set the height of our cut. And it's going to help us in the long run. And now let's finish up the roughing out of our tenon at the bench. We'll make a couple of saw cuts and then we'll go on to cutting some curves on the bandsaw. That's always fun. All right, so I've got a hand saw here, and this is a carcass saw, but there are a lot of different saws you can use. You can use a Japanese saw on a pull stroke if you like. We're still roughing this tenon out, so I want to get started here with a cut. Okay, and there's one face. So I'm going to turn it around, create the other shoulder. Okay, there's the other shoulder. Now, I've left a little bit here. I don't know if you can see it or not. There's a little ridge right here. This is just a tad higher. So what I want to do is I want to take a chisel, good sharp chisel, and I want to pare that away so that it's flush all the way around. Now I'm just going to cut this little piece off right here, and that'll give us this face finally open at the top of the stand. So this is not a really tough cut, it's just a cut. So I've got it lined up. Cut that off. Now, what I want to do is I've got this surface needed to be nice and square, it's cut. This surface needed to be nice and square, it's cut. We have a tenon that we can work with. And now let's cut these lines on the bandsaw. Now I'm going to use a 1/2-inch blade. The 1/2-inch blade will help keep us on track. We're going to cut right down the middle of the line. So let's go over to the bandsaw and we'll make those cuts. And we won't be able to get into these radiuses because it's not real well. But we'll come back and do a little sculpting. Before I cut this other side, this is an opportunity to use some hand tools and smooth out any little rough spots so that we have fared a very nice curve here. Let me show you kind of one surprising tool that makes this a lot easier. Let's go to the bench. When I'm trying to fare a curve here, and I've got a few little bumps and things like that, what I want to do is I want to drag a pencil across here, and that's going to tell me where I've worked, where I need to work. And that's going to be very, very helpful. Now I've got my line here on the inside, so I can see my line on the inside. It'll be harder for you to see that way, but I'm going to work down to that line. Also, drawing these lines right across the width of the edge as I work will help me keep it square, because I want them to go away and still, whatever's there, to still be parallel. And the cuts that I make will leave some parallel surfaces that I can work off of. Well, one of the tools that I really love for doing something like this is a hand plane or a block plane. Let me get something and I'll come back and we'll see how it works. All right, a block plane can be great for this. And as long as I'm working downhill, now those are the lines that I'm seeing, and this is a low place right there where that white line is, but where I am making a new surface, those are all parallel, so it tells me that I'm keeping the piece squared with the edge here by the kind of surfaces it leaves as I work this. And I'll tell you what, a little block plane like this is just a premium item to use. And as long as I'm working downhill, in other words, the grain is running out in that direction, then it's really simple to use something like this, and you're not going to have any catches and rips to speak of. Now I'm getting kind of closer to a point. About right here is where the grain changes and will run downhill the other way. So I'm going to put a nice circle right there so I won't get carried away and start getting tear out by planing in the wrong place in the wrong direction. All right, so far, see how easy that was? We've got a nice smoothly faired surface on that line. I like that. This is great. Now, let's do the other edge, which is a little more downhill. Now, this, the grain kind of runs in a way that might be a little problematic here, but we'll see. I've got my lines there. I already feel it tearing some. Let's see what we can do. Yeah, this is going to be a little more difficult. Now, if we're getting too much tear out, change our direction here. Yeah, the grain's just kind of moving along the surface of that line right there. Makes it kind of difficult. Let's back up a little bit and see what we have. We're going to go very gently. And a lot of times, if you're getting tear out, then you can change to abrading the surface. So I'm looking for those parallel lines at the same time. A lot going on here. And this piece of walnut is got some curl to it. It's interesting. Let's see. So we're still going downhill there. It's like petting the dog. You don't want to pet the dog from the tail toward the head. That won't work. Hair will just fight you the whole way. All right. So, considering all of that, let's switch to abrading a bit. We can smooth it some more, but use a rasp. All right. Well, let me get a rasp here. This has got a nice flat bottom to it. I want to make sure I hold it flat. Take advantage of the shape of the tool every time you can. Okay, it's looking good. We're already good going the other way. Now, got a nice curve, faired. It's going to be good. Now, let's cut this line. Now, I'm going to make some relief cuts in because a 1/2 inch blade is going to have a hard time getting into that radius. So I'm going to make a number of cuts coming this way so that as I cut little segments out of that radius, they'll break free at the bandsaw and my saw won't bind. And then this is going to be a nice long cut. Then up here I'll leave some to be sculpted. So let's get to the saw and let's make the cut. Just going to make some little lines here to show you that if I make some relief cuts with the bandsaw from the outside down almost to that line, then when I actually make the cut, come around this radius, no matter which direction I come from, it will help each segment release and give room for a larger blade, like the 1/2-inch blade I'm using, to make the cut. I'm going to end up just off the line and then sculpting to the line. At this end, we'll have kind of a similar situation. And I need to make a couple of relief cuts there to get the blade in. So let's get started. After you finish making the bandsaw cuts, you can then take the cutoff parts, these two big cutoff parts, and you can kind of recreate it in the square or as a board so that it'll be easier to drill the hole up here at the drill press. Now, if you want to drill before you come over here and make these cuts, that's fine too. The idea is to be able to make drilling of the hole as easy as possible. You might, if you don't have a drill press, you might just drill it by hand. Set a square up and try to be as careful as possible and drill the hole. But I'll show you how to do it with a drill press, and you can adapt to your situation from there. Let's go to the bench and I'll show you how I get it ready after making these cuts for that drilling on the drill press. All right, this is when you take all the cutoffs except for here and here, and you stack them together, and it is pretty much in the square. Well, you don't have to have this one for this step, but if I take that piece, which is the cutoff there, and I stack them together, put a clamp here, and then put a clamp at the other end, okay, now I've got a secure little carriage or a jig to hold this flat while I drill this hole. So the next thing is I'm going to get the hardware that we're going to use to attach the holder for the guitar, and it's the whole reason we're going to drill a hole. So let me get that, and I'll show you how it works. I've got it set up to drill to 1 1/8 of an inch. So let's go. All right, now we've got that done. Let's lay out these tapers. take away some of this chunkiness. So, the way I do that is first to find a place to start. 4.5 inches from the bottom here, I made a line on each side. And up here at the top, I found a center line, and then a 1/2 inch on each side of the center line gives me it's going to be 1 inch wide at the top up here. All right, so I need to draw a line from here all the way down to this point, and the same thing on the other side. It's always nice to have a little thin piece, long piece of straight wood here that we can use to lay something like this out, and it'll curve to fit the situation. So I'm going to use a clamp here. On the mark. And a Sharpie. Now I'm going to move it. Now, got the lines laid out, just take it to the bandsaw, cut these pieces off, and we can start shaping. Let's go to the bandsaw. I have a 3/4 inch radius rounding over bit here, and it has a pilot bearing there. This is a starter pin. Now you can use a handheld router if you'd like. It really doesn't make any difference. It's just with a handheld router you've got to figure out a way to hold the stock, but you don't have to do that with a router table. All right, so I'm going to round over this whole outside edge. Both back edges are going to be rounded over with the 3/4 inch radius rounding over bit. The inside I don't want to touch yet. I'm going to shape that by hand. Well, let's let this router table do the work. All right, so we've got the round over started. I'm going to complete it here and complete it up there and kind of blend it in a little bit. I've got the trend set. So let's go over to the bench and I'll show you how. On the mandolin stand that I built, I used a piece of something from a company called String Swing. StringSwing.com is where you can see that, where you can get it, or find a dealer that you can get it from. The string swing comes attached to a little piece of wood that you can attach to your wall. Well, I felt like this was a great use of that, taking it off and then being able to insert it here. Now, what you've got is, this is a bushing, a little plastic bushing, but then you've got a bolt here that needs to thread into something. So what I did was I found a size here. This is a 1/4 20 size threaded insert. And so it will thread into this insert. If you drill a hole for the threaded insert and then screw the threaded insert into that hole up here, then you can just then you can just thread the string swing into the insert, and this is what you'll have for your guitar. These come in different sizes. This is a mandolin size. For a guitar, you'll need a little more room here, and so you can buy it for a guitar also. You can use it even for, let's say, a Fender type headstock. It's just going to turn a little bit because of the shape of that headstock. But most headstocks will just hook right in here. Make sure you get the right size. Well, Easy Lock makes these components: the threaded insert and a drill bit that is just right for the insert. And then this is an extra thing that they sell, is a something to drive it in with. And you really want to drive this in by hand. They also have something that you can use with a drill to put on your drill. I don't like that for this purpose because you have less control, things could split out. But these are the things you need. And so I'm going to set this drill bit up in the drill press, and then we're going to drill the right size hole, and we'll be ready to move on from there. Okay, we need to make a base for the stand. Now, the mandolin stand is 12 inches by 7 inches. It's 1 3/4 inches in thickness. It's heavy walnut. You need a wood that is heavy enough or dense enough to give it some heft, because the weight is going to keep it from tipping over, the weight and the width and the length. A guitar is heavier, it's wider, it's taller usually than a mandolin. So you need to keep those things definitely in mind. So what I did was to take the 12 inches, add 3 inches to it. Our width for the guitar stand is 15 inches, or the length rather. The width is 10 inches. Now it's got a little bit of a live edge here. I'm going to take that off anyway during the sculpting. If you wanted to leave a live edge, it might just be the perfect thing. But that's not the aim here, to make a live edge piece. Now I found the center of the board at 10 inches, so I came in 5 inches from each side, and I marked the center line. And then I took my column here and I laid it right on that center line. I found the center line, a center line around here, so that I'd have something to kind of rest it on and to look at. And it looks like I drew off some lines, and it looks like I'll be 2 1/4 inches from the back and 10 1/2 from the front. And my tenon measures, well, let's see, it measures 2 1/4. And so I drew it all off, and now we've got an area that we can excavate. And I'm going to take it to like 1 1/16 deep, because the tenon, the length of the tenon is 1 inch. And I want just a little bit of room for glue whatever I'm going to use to hold the column to the base. So if I use some Forstner bits and a drill press, I can drill some holes, clean it out with a chisel, and that's a lot of good handwork practice that we all could use, and then we can fit that tenon and we'll have something really nice. Now a Forstner bit is made, is used so we can have just a level, flat bottom hole. Anytime you want to drill a hole that has an absolutely flat bottom, use a Forstner bit. My friends at Fish, they really make some great Forstner bits. So let's get to the drill press. I'll get this all set up and then I'll show you how. I've got it set for the necessary depth, 1/16 of an inch. And all I need to do is use this little 1/2-inch Forstner bit to bore all the way around the perimeter close to the line, then clean out the middle, and then take my chisels and use them to chisel to the line. So I'm using this little 1/2-inch bit so I can get closer to the corners. I think that's important. So let's get started. Now, as I drill these holes, if I leave a little space in between, I can come back and drill a hole in that space, and that way it's more effective all the way around. So skip a little space, and then try to get as close to the line or the corners as you can. And we'll just keep going. I don't know if you can see how flat the bottom is, but that Forstner bit left it nice and flat, and because it was a smaller bit, we were able to get real close to our lines right here. And now all we have to do is take the chisels, chisel that out, and fit the tenon. Let's go do it. All right, so what I'm going to do is take this chisel and I'm going to shave off all these little edges right here and into the corner, and then we'll start the fitting. I'm not going to get all the way to the line, but I'm going to get closer. So I'm just going to shave them off. And I want to work as perpendicular as possible. Nothing will improve your woodworking skills like handwork. Now I'm going to work into that corner. First I'm going to work the cross-cut side into the corner. If I work the long grain side, then what might happen is I might get a split out. You don't want to split out, not at this point. Got too much invested in it. So let's work cross grain first, and that kind of provides a stop for the split that might happen, or in a way will happen, as we trim the longer grain. All right, let's see if we're closer here. All right, so we've got it to fit. Well, the next thing is to shape our base and to do some more shaping on the upright. So I set a slight bevel away from this line. This line's at 5/8 of an inch from the bottom. And the bevel's just to give it a little bit of shape. And so we're going to bevel it all the way around and see if that's what we like. If not, we can take off some more. This is just kind of a shape it till you smile. Well, now just comparing, it looks like we need to shape our base, and we need to shape our column here, or our upright. And see how this is tapered so nicely? It gives it an elegant look, keeps it from being so clunky looking. So we're going to do some tapering here, some shaping here. And if we work hard, we might be hanging a guitar by tomorrow.